Hello, and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror, movies, and awesomeness. This week, we continue a retrospective of films from famed producer Val Lewton with the 1944 film The Curse of the Cat People. This is Castle of Horror, episode 347, if you can believe it. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be discussing Curse of the Cat People from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. This movie's only an hour long, so we will definitely spoil just about anything that could possibly be found in it. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castlebridge Media. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the Pen America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Hello.
Hello. And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from the one and only Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Happy day after your birthday.
I thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay. And everybody here, everybody that's on this call was actually on a birthday Zoom call that I had, and it was really funny. It was great. I had a wonderful time seeing, all my wonderful friends, and they were all very sweet, and they answered trivia questions, which was really, I mean, seriously, it was nice. So that was cool.
I have learned that I know nothing, and yet I refuse to accept that Zombies of Moratau is not your favorite film.
Something I think that
it's his favorite film to talk about.
That question probably should have been thrown out. I think it was probably a bad question, because I don't think it's possible to say what one's favorite movie really is.
It is possible to say what your favorite movie. My favorite movie is Ghostbusters,
and that was one of the choices.
Right.
Yes, but that was a red herring. I think you thought I would pick that just because I like.
No, I knew you wouldn't
so
pick
much.
it. I just thought I just put it there in honor of you.
It was a shout out.
It's much easier, I think, with me and probably most people that we talk to a lot. It's much easier to go, what's a movie that person kind of doesn't really care for, and and you can kind of pick it out and go, I know that they actually don't really dig that. So, but it was fun, and it was like a moment. If you have a birthday coming up, it can be really fun to do like a Zoom call with just like people from different parts of your life, because it was like this is your life, which is a reference that dates me, to be sure, but that's what it was like, because there were people I knew in grade school, and like people I knew in in college, and video
people
games
from now.
and people from now, whatever now is.
Well, this
So,
podcast for one.
people from people from pandemic era podcasting and all of this. So okay, the Curse of the Cat.
Just wanted
Go
to
ahead.
say
Yes, sorry.
I just wanted to say one other thing about this trivia thing.
Yeah.
I have been cracking up for days about the favorite horror movie question, and I don't remember the name of the gentleman who said this, but someone said, I know The Shining is not Jason's favorite horror movie because that's too much of a basic bitch answer.
That would be Larry Nadarcy.
Yeah, I've been laughing about that for days.
That's
He's a
really,
very funny guy.
really a good comment. Boy, that was a good comment. Yeah, he was
No
on
offense
fire.
to anybody whose favorite movie is.
The Shining is a great movie. It would be
It is a great
completely
movie.
understandable, but it is also true that Jason loves himself a deep cut. So
Yes.
you know.
Funny.
Oh,
and if
man.
Larry decided to listen to this episode for the first time, then shout out
No,
to Larry.
I'm pretty sure that Matt
'cause he-
House said that, though. It wasn't Larry Nadarcy.
Oh, you think it was Matt House who said it? Oh,
Yes.
well, whichever one of them said it, if they're listening now, then shout out to them, because neither one of them knew that we had a podcast, I don't think.
Right. Which shows how well we market our podcast to the people that actually know us. That's all it is. Yeah. So okay. The Curse of the Cat People. We've been talking about this today on Twitter, and it blows my mind. This is a 1944 American psychological fantasy thriller film. 1944, Curse of the Cat People, directed by Gunther von Fritsch and Robert Wise, and we'll get into that. Produced by Val Lewton, and apparently deeply, deeply influenced by the creative choices of Val Lewton, more than the directors. And I'm wondering just how much. And starring Simone Simon, Kent Smith, and Jane Randolph, the three stars of Cat People. The plot follows Amy, a young girl who befriends the ghost of her father's deceased wife, Irena, a Serbian fashion designer who descended from a race of people who could transform into cats. That is a movie that sounds like a movie that is not the movie that we saw. Isn't that interesting? That is
Yeah.
that right, and that basic problem is what has caused people to be dismayed over what to make of Curse of the Cat People. The film marked Robert Wise's first directing credit, so it's a sequel to Cat People, shares a bunch of the characters, but as people have always pointed out, it's like somebody took a dare and said, how can I make a sequel that doesn't quite feel like a sequel sometimes? So let's get our opening thoughts. We'll go Tony, Julia, Drew, and then I'll go. Tony, what were your thoughts about Curse of the Cat People?
I think it's not bad. It is I kind of agree with people who say that it's maybe a little bit disappointing if you were expecting a true sequel that had any of the flavor or kind of the dialogue or the feeling, the atmosphere of the first one. Like all of that goes out the window. The dad's a super jerk, and now his cool wife, who they were working together previously, and they were this like work power couple. She's now succumbed to the norms of the time and is like, oh, I'm a housewife now.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just, I don't like disliking a movie, and I don't dislike this movie, but all of the flavor, it's so hard to come from the previous movie, and there are interesting bits, but it is probably more forgettable than I would like it to be.
Interesting.
And I think it's just, it kind of goes along, but there's some neat bits, but in general, it's an hour and 10 minutes tops, an hour and 9 minutes, I think. And it feels, I don't know, in a way it feels more like it could be like an episode of an anthology show.
Yes.
A Night Gallery-esque, maybe not quite Twilight Zone, but something, a horror anthology show because of the ghost parts and the parts about imagination. It just, I don't know, it just didn't have some of the gravity, I think, that some of the themes of the first one had. All that theme building and kind of where that was going is just not here. And, far be it for me to criticize like what choices, like, oh, we're going this way. But after you've seen the first one and, we talked extensively about it. It just doesn't have that same gravity. And that's a little disappointing. But there's some good bits here and there. So, I don't say don't see it, but it definitely isn't one that stuck with me in the same way.
That's a fantastic start to this, because I know that I came out, I'm going to talk last, but I know that I came out clear on the other side of this. But this is going to be really good. Julia, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the problem is inherent in what Tony started talking about, which is if you came into it thinking that it was a sequel to the Cat People movie, then it's going to be disappointing, because it's just not. It wasn't intended to be. They made it. It was written to be a movie called Amy and Her Friend, like kind of a ghost movie that examines, the psychology of a child who sees an imaginary friend, and it's producer Val Lewton's kind of autobiographical journey of his own childhood and his relationship with his daughter. And so then they went, hey, these actors are the same people that we want to use the same people that were in Cat People, and that did really well. And so let's just call it something with Cat People, the RKO executive said, because we want to attract the same, like the people that went to the first movie. So that's the problem, is that you come in going, oh, it's a sequel, and they just kind of wrote in a couple of lines and used the same actors in order to quote unquote make it a sequel, but it has nothing to do with the first movie. But it is a gorgeous piece of work. I mean, it's just beautiful, visually stunning. It's like I couldn't believe how just beautiful it was to look at. I think the performances are great. The little girl is amazing. And I love exploring all the themes that are in this film. I mean, it's heartbreaking in a lot of ways, as a parent, especially. Just watching like the choices that the dad makes and the mom makes, and and stuff's going on at the school and stuff going on with their friends. It really does. I think watching it as a parent is probably really colored how I see it, because I'm seeing this little kid and going, oh my gosh, if my child experienced these things, or if I treated my child this way, or if Jason treated our child this way, like what? And none of it was abusive or horrible, but it's just like, wow, you're really doing a disservice. Yeah, we'll talk more about it as we go through. But the point is, I just really I felt like there was so much to think about in such a short time, so much to so many interesting themes. So yeah, I think as long as you can separate it, just call it in your brain Amy and her friend, then you'll be fine. But if you expected there to be anybody turning into a werecat, then no. There's just none of that.
Well, I don't even expect that in particular. I mean, I actually want to come back to some of the stuff you talked about, because in some ways, to me, a lot of that felt way more after school special.
Mm-hmm.
Like a really beautiful after school special.
Yeah.
Right? Like it is beautiful to look at, but
it doesn't feel horror.
But it is heartbreaking in the way that kids act and stuff. I just want to, I want to get everybody else, but I do want to come back to some of that, because I agree with you, but also have my own takes. So.
I get you.
Fair. Totally fair. And just to throw this in, in a sense, it feels like a giant change of subject from the first movie. Mm-hmm. It's like you're rolling, and then all of a sudden they're like, it's a needle scratch, even if it goes into something amazing. It leads me to wonder. I want to hold in my head that thing that Tony said about it feels like we've started an anthology, a Val Lewton anthology, and the titles are almost incidental to what's actually going to be on the screen. Drew, what are your opening thoughts?
Well, first off, I've actually always heard an alternate
origin story,
kind of continuing to think is that Val Lewton was basically told, you can make whatever movie you want, but you have to call it Curse of the Cat People, and otherwise we don't care. And then he said, well, can't we call this Amy and her friend? And they were like, no. And then he begged, and they still were like, no. And then eventually he went off. And I'm not saying I'm right and Julie is wrong. Like, I'm saying that this movie's old, and history kind of has a way of lots of people telling different versions of the way things.
Well, that's not inconsistent with what I was saying. I was just saying that he wanted to call it Amy and her friend, and they wanted him to call it the Cat People to attract those people.
Honestly,
but I don't know what order everything went in.
I think if this movie was called Amy and Her Friend, we wouldn't be talking about it.
True.
But no matter how good it is,
seems unlikely.
I think the fact that it is a sequel to Cat People has brought people to it. It certainly brought me to it when I was a kid. When I was a kid, this movie pissed me off. Like I hated it as a kid. It's a movie that my appreciation of has grown as I have grown, which is weird, because it's like the further I get away from childhood, which is what this movie is about to a degree, the more I understand its themes of like childhood. I also really love the setting, even though this was shot in California. It's set in the Hudson Valley, particularly Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow, which is a area that I have a lot of affinity for and have actually visited on multiple occasions. And I just love that that's the setting, and that there's like actually like a whole monologue devoted to the Headless Horseman in this movie.
Yeah, beautifully read.
Yeah. And I think there are a few tweaks that you could have made to this without changing it much, to maybe tie it more into the first movie. But my view of it this time around, considering some of the discussions that we had, is actually because I did go through a period where I just chose to view this as its own thing, which is a valid way to look at it. But now looking at it, having just like watched the original last week and us talking a lot about the relationship of these two people, I kind of like watching it as, a sequel, so I can say, well, the marriage was sour. It went sour, and it didn't go like you thought it went. And now you're terrible parents. And things didn't go the way you had an affair on your first wife, and that ended tragically, and things didn't go as happily ever after as you thought they did. So like it's interesting to me viewing it in this. It's not the only way you could view it, certainly, but this time around that definitely colored the way I watched the movie a lot.
Yeah. My thought is that it's a huge, the word I used earlier was needle scratch. It's because you're going in a flow with the first film, and that film has themes, and it's about, like, the themes of the first film are trauma and people's willingness to support one another, and then people's willingness sometimes to just give up on supporting one another, and on mystery and sanity and abuse and all kinds of things like that. Wonderful adult themes. And then there's a needle scratch, and here, and it's like you've been the Beach Boys and you've been doing your Beach Boys thing, and then all of a sudden here comes Good Vibrations. Weirdly enough, this movie is to horror what Good Vibrations is to rock music. It is a complete, just 90-degree turn, and suddenly it's fairy tales and people dressed up in princess costumes and flakes of snow and ghosts and sanity in a totally different means of, like, we worried before in the previous film, is Irena insane? Here is a child insane, or are these things real? And it's neither better nor worse. It's just it's a weird, completely different. You can tell the creatives involved were like, I know what you guys want. It just so happens that this particular month I'm not interested in doing that. I'm going to do Pan's Labyrinth, basically, and it blew my mind. I I was just completely moved by it. I thought it was gorgeous. But all of Tony's points are well taken, because I think I don't feel that way, but I could see you deciding, you know what, it falls a little flat. It's a little obvious. Some of the child psychology stuff just seems a little thick. The moment. Go ahead, Tony. Sorry.
It's still the trauma comes. They just sublimated the trauma. So the trauma is mostly the dad, subjecting his kid to his own kind of faults and creating trauma there, which is a different thing altogether.
Yes.
Either way, he's still just terrible.
Yeah,
screw that guy.
We should actually.
That makes me angry throughout. But I didn't mean to interrupt. But some of the themes it's a different. It's a different approach to the trauma and the to be honest, though, now that we're talking about it, I think there's a lot of movies that have come after this that deal with children and their imaginations and fantasy that definitely owe a lot to this movie. The way that it tells the story, the way it's acted, the realm between fantasy and reality and her encounters throughout it. I think there are a lot of movies, like, you can see where somebody obviously had watched this and used it, maybe not as a template, like a solid template, but I think it influenced, whether people want to admit it or
Del Toro's
not, a lot of movies
on speed dial, right? This has to be something that Del Toro probably knows backwards and forwards. I just kind of get.
I don't think you're wrong
to like bring a lot of people.
Bring up the comparison to Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, luckily this kid. Spoilers for Pan's Labyrinth. Luckily, jump 10 seconds forward. Luckily, this kid survives this movie. Which is. which I had to, there were moments there where I really wasn't sure she was going to make it to the end of this film. And when we get to this, by the way, I have huge questions about the end of this movie. Yeah, Tony.
Yeah.
I have a question leading up to this. I wonder if anybody can name a movie that was done like this. Like, everybody kind of agrees, like, it was not really supposed to be a sequel, but we're going to call it a sequel, but we're going to use that name and we're going to do something totally different.
Boy, I don't know.
I'm trying to think if there's ever been a successful, like, one where the fans of the original didn't feel slightly betrayed, or that it turned out to be like a way more grand, like, wow, they did something different, and that really worked, and I didn't believe that it was going to be better than the first one, because that is, to me, that's done. Heck,
I think it's a recipe for disaster. You should never do that.
Oh, yeah. When I was working at Origin, they did that to a game called The Darkening. And they're like, hey, it's this game. It's Privateer 2. You guys all like Privateer because EA owned Privateer. You guys all like that. Like, we'll just name this game Darkening, cash in on that. It was a colossal.
Yeah.
There were so many bad choices, but that was one of the worst because no one who really wanted, nobody who loved Privateer got a Privateer 2 that they were happy with, because it wasn't, by the way. It was never planned to be that. And I'm just curious at how many movies I can think of
only one.
where...
I can think of one right off the top of my head. And that is Thor Ragnarok is the only one I can think of that is a complete 90-degree turn from where they were going.
Yeah, but it wasn't. But what I'm talking about is Thor Ragnarok was always going to be Thor Ragnarok. Yeah. There was never it wasn't Space Adventures 3.
Right.
And they were like, well, let's take Space Adventures 3 script and turn it into Thor Ragnarok. As far as I know.
No, good point. No, you're totally right.
What I'm talking about is
shift.
Yeah. I'm talking about a movie that was something else. Like we have a script.
Yeah. Isn't there been like a Halloween or wasn't there like a Halloween or a
Halloween
Friday the 13th or something?
Halloween.
There's a lot of Hellraiser sequels that were not necessarily Hellraiser movies, but no one likes those. Like,
well, I got one.
Yeah, that's what this is what I'm getting at. Like
Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Die Hard.
Die Hard with a Vengeance
is fairly well liked.
It is fairly well liked, but it's a complete
right
divergence from the Die Hard.
I guess that is a good example because Simple Simon was the but I like Die Hard 3 all right, but it's just it's pretty rare to me that you don't alienate enough people. And that's kind of why I bring it up as a discussion. It's more of a discussion topic of I'm trying to think where that has come off well. And I think you can still make, it's just the hubris of that the name will bring back people. And again, I think to Drew's point, though, it does bring us here because it is called Curse of the Cat People. So it worked in a way.
Yeah.
But so many times when somebody has like, just slap this name on it, that's our brand. It potentially I do want to point out than it could be. I don't know. But I guess, again, why we discuss these things is because like it did bring enough people in the theaters because it was called that. So who am I to say? I guess that's why I'm not in marketing, right?
Well, no, I was just going to say that we see it more. We see this craziness, and it's very hard to keep track of with movies overseas. So like a standard vampire movie in Germany will be renamed, Dracula, blah, 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 some sort of Dracula name or some sort of Frankenstein name, even if it's not connected, because it's just easier they'll literally use those words as things like brand names. So it can be kind of like that. It's the great thing about watching a movie this many years after it came out, 80 years after it came out, is that now we happened to watch Cat People last week, but we didn't have to, and so you can completely regard a movie as whatever you want. We could actually, Columbia or whoever could re-release this film, Sony could, and just call it, Amy and the Ghost. It doesn't matter, it's we can just regard it as its own thing because nobody cares anymore. So I think there's some luck that comes around in just the passage of time. Anyway. All right. So we should get into it. And I guess the best way is just to move through, and we can stop to talk about themes. But like I say, we have totally different themes. We have Kent Smith is back, and he was a kind of a jerky husband in the first. But here's the thing: from the perspective of the 40s, he probably was regarded as more or less a pretty regular dude. I don't think that the things that you and me, Tony, you and me, and Julia and Drew recognize as being jerky about this guy is just kind of standard, off the shelf, regular dude.
Some of the stuff is, but like there are definitely times in this movie where people kind of call his parenting choices into question. Like the teacher in particular, towards the end of the film is very much like, hey, you need to maybe address your child on her own level instead of being dismissive.
Right.
Of
dismissiveness, by the way, is what he was like. That's his character trait here. Hey, I don't want to hear it. the extra crap that you're giving me is just getting in the way of my plan of being a normal family. And that was exactly the crap that he gave his first wife so at least that's super duper
Well,
consistent.
it's consistent, but it's also, I think, more cemented, because if you do view this as a sequel, he has been traumatized because he believes that his deceased first wife, the reason why she died is that she had these fanciful ideas about being a werecat. I mean, it's never spelled out. It's never spelled out exactly like that.
And even though he knows for a fact that she really was one, he's still not willing to. And I totally get that. I mean, I get dissociating about, like, not wanting to confront what's really happening and just being like, because I always see as parents. So I'm thinking, like, if you find out, that your kid is being beaten up at school, it's very possible that you're going to ignore a bunch of clues that the kid's beating up at school because it's such a horrible reality to have to face. Because then you're like, I can't. I hate to confront the idea that I have been allowing this to happen. That now I have to do something. Like, what am I supposed to do? Take my kid out of school? All this. So it's way easier to just go, no, nothing. It's not there. It's not there. And you can see that with him because he starts to freak out once he realizes that it's Irena that she's seeing. He really doesn't want that to be true, because that's a horrible thing. If that's true, then what is he supposed to do about it? He's lost complete control of the situation because this werecat is now a werecat ghost, presumably, that's haunting his child, and that's so horrific. So I totally get why he'd be like, nope, not real. Just stop. Just don't think that anymore.
Right.
I see it.
So what's going on? Yeah, go ahead, Drew.
I think the stuff that gives that what you're saying, like the way, like they present the sequence where he takes her upstairs to spank her, and the teacher tells her not to interfere. Like, that stuff does feel like an outdated morality in 2021, to be sure. But there's definitely plenty of times where both his wife, although she's only marginally better in fairness than he is, but but she calls his parenting choices into check, and the teacher definitely does. But
we should get specific real quick about what the plot is going on.
Right. So, let me give it a step. So this little girl has, had imaginary friends. She's had whatever. She's always apparently really bought into any kind of fairy tale story that comes into her life, including the fact that at some point in her childhood, her father told her that the tree in the backyard was a magical mailbox tree. So she actually puts party invitations into the tree thinking that it will work as a magical mailbox, and so the party invitations don't get sent out and nobody comes to her party. And so stuff like that has happened her whole life, apparently, where she's just been really, she's just had a great imagination. And so then she gets a ring from this creepy old lady at a house, kind of a haunted house, not really a haunted house, but the weird, the creepy house in the neighborhood. That this lady throws a ring to her.
It reminded me of the Onceler from the Lorax.
Exactly.
Like, the hand comes out.
Yes.
Like, hey, it's the Onceler. Yeah. But like, she's an old lady Onceler.
Right. So and this is a little bit of a diversion, but for some reason the old lady believes that her daughter died a couple of years ago, and everybody else seems to think
years ago. Died
many years ago. Oh, when she was 6. I didn't remember that. I thought it was just recently. Anyway, but for whatever reason she thinks that happened, but it's that cat, the crazy cat woman who called Irena her sister in the first movie, is the daughter, and the daughter's like, no, I'm your actual daughter, and she's like, no, you're an imposter, my daughter died a long time ago. Anyway, so that old lady gives the little girl a ring, and for some reason the little girl's able to wish on this ring for a friend, and Irena materializes, but we don't know it's Irena at first. We just see that she is seeing that she now has a friend. So that is so as she goes through, she's not willing to say, even though her father desperately wants her to, that she doesn't have a friend, because she just really can't stand the idea.
So let's stop there, because we've got a lot of the plot there, and just stuff to call out in there. I have to say, first of all, the first appearance of Irena when she steps out of the woods is, to me, chilling. It's a chilling moment, because
it's chilling and gorgeous.
Every goddamn moment of this movie is a picture postcard that you can like Instagram. It's all beautiful. Nicholas Musaraka is the cinematographer, and I don't know if he's responsible for these compositions, or if Val Lewton is, or if Robert Wise is, or I don't know who has set these compositions up this way, but they are beautiful. Go ahead, Drew.
Although this is the part where I think if you wanted to tie it more into the first movie, but still keep this virtually the same, because for a movie that's called Curse of the Cat People, one of the things that is the most funny about it when you watch the two of them close together is there are virtually no cats in this movie at all. Like there's a taxidermed cat and there's some cats in a painting at one point, and that's about it.
Not just that, but even the ghost of Irena is a kind of fairy ghost, and it makes sense
that's what
because
I'm
it's
saying.
her
like, what if you
imagination.
What if you had her like instead of her just coming out as her at first, what if you had her sort of heralded by you could have like a black cat appear first or something, and that would have been enough, I think, lip service to the first movie.
It just gives you an idea how much they didn't give a shit about those themes.
Yeah,
isn't that amazing?
But I'm like, if you were remaking these, like if you, let's say, like you plan, you know, a duology of cat people where you remake the first two, and you wanted to make them more tied into each other, that is a choice you could make.
Yeah,
absolutely. Not only that, but like I said, the ghost looks. I mean, it's beautiful costume. It's filmed amazingly
Honestly,
at all times. But she is definitely
more gorgeous in this movie than she does in the first movie. Like she's
definitely
beautiful.
The child's ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's her fairy tale ghost, and that's the right choice for this movie, but maybe not the right choice for the sequel to Cat People.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it's right after the girl Amy has been hearing stories about Rapunzel, and it's right after Rapunzel that when her friend that she wishes for appears, she's dressed like Tony said, like a fairy princess, you know, like Rapunzel or something like that, you know, right, with the braiding that crosses on the dress and all that stuff. And it's just off in its own direction. I got something else. That family in the big dark house, which is a house that got used in a few other films, or at least a set. Oh boy, this thing is weird. I mean, so you have the the old lady, whose name is escaping me right now, Miss Farron. Yes. You have the old lady, Miss Farron, and her daughter, Barbara. And her daughter, Barbara, is menacing and tall, angular, kind of scary and wraith-like. And so there's two ways to read their whole storyline. Because it's interesting that in an hour-long thing, they have a whole storyline. One way to read it is, old lady has dementia, and she's still with it most of the time, but whatever's happened to her brain, she just literally doesn't think that her daughter is her daughter, which is scary and tragic.
And more likely.
And more likely. But I got to tell you, my reading of it is she might be damn right. Barbara might be a ghost. I'm totally fine with the notion,
or a con artist, for that matter.
Yes.
Somebody who took her daughter's
well, Barbara
place.
seems to believe that she really is. She's like, you didn't open my present. You know, why don't you treat me like your daughter? And so
no, but I'm saying if you're a con artist, you're gonna be pretty good at faking.
Okay, so yes, number 3 is the crime drama theory. But I am down with the notion that Barbara might be dead. The way that she always appears and disappears by ascending and descending a staircase with that weird underlight that she has, she seems ghostly, you know.
But if she is a ghost, other people also see her because she opens the door.
Yeah.
She opens the door for Edward, and other people are like, "Oh, was it the daughter or the mother?" So I mean, clearly, there's the idea that there's somebody else living there.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know.
She's at the very least kind of psychotic because she debates strangling a child.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's the other thing. She's like, I'm so jealous of that child that if she comes back here, I'm going to kill her. Yeah, and is about to, and that's, you know, and so that's the big climactic moment towards the end.
She played the cat lady in the restaurant scene in the first movie.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
sorry.
But that was so memorable, you know. And I'm wondering though, if you, I mean, remember, even like even Evil Dead 2 doesn't completely fit with Evil Dead 1, right? I'm wondering if you watched this movie 2 years after you saw Cat People in the theater, would you remember this actress? Was the creepy
I
cat
don't
lady?
think so, because
Yeah, I would, because her face is really memorable.
yeah, but keep in mind, like, this was the 40s. People didn't have home video or streaming or anything like that. They I don't know. I mean,
I don't
surely,
think you would remember.
yeah.
I have my doubts that you would remember that it was her. But we could. Who knows? It's interesting that
Shadow.
it's the same. Yeah. There's a moment.
Well, I mean, it could go either way though, because there were publications
True.
that you could see, like, oh, these were the stars of this. Like, the way that media covered movies was also different.
Yes.
So you might remember. Also, you may or may not see less movies depending on where you're at. So those movies might be more memorable, or you would kind of mull them over in a different way because there wasn't just a constant stream of I can watch a movie 24 hours a day if I feel like it.
Yeah.
So you may or may not. I mean, I can't say, but I think there's a chance that you would, just because of the nature of releases and how movies were at the time.
Yeah. Well, that's possible. Anyway, totally different character she's playing here, one presumes, and she's really good.
She's styled very different in this one. Like, she's so glamorous in her brief bit in the first, Cat People, whereas like here, you called her Wraith-like, and I think that's right on. Like, she's not frumpy by any means, but she's very sharp around the edges.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know, like, the old lady, I think, is at least this time, like, Mrs. Farron might be my favorite character in this movie.
Yeah, she's super interesting.
Well, her telling of the
I'm with you there, actually.
Movie stops for her to recite a sort of brief monologue on the ghost,
the Headless Horseman.
The Headless Horseman. Yeah. What is it called? Sleepy Hollow.
Sleepy Hollow. Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
And it's beautiful. It's almost like a music break. It just it
really was terrifying. She's like, "Hey, before you go, I just want to tell you a story. Okay, sweet dreams." And it's like a terrifying story.
Well, and
I'm like, "Oh my god, that poor child."
Underlit her in this way that suddenly she, like, you just name dropped Sam Raimi, but she kind of looks like she would be a witch in an Evil Dead movie for like a brief moment. But like her backstory seems interesting, because apparently she was an actress when she was younger, or maybe she just believed she was an actress. It's never quite clear, but she composes herself like that.
And she would probably call it trod the boards. We can assume that at some point she was really an actress, and what a daffy person. But she's wonderful, and what a great, like, this is a very movie creation, right? But what a wonderful imaginary friend, in the sense that these friends in the movies are, that a child would meet this crazy old lady who wears loud costumes and wears rings that she says came from royalty, and
and then she's such a great friend for the little girl, because when the little girl presents her with a dime store ring for Christmas, she says, "Oh, who needs a ring from a king when I can have this beautiful ring from an actual person who cares about me?" I just thought that was so sweet. I was like, that is brilliant, because she could have been like, "Oh, thanks," and then put it like aside, be like, "This is a 25 or whatever the equivalent was back then, cent ring." But instead she's just like super grateful for it. I thought that was nice. Really neat touch.
I think this stuff, like the Christmas stuff, is another reason why my affection for this movie has grown over the years, because the last part of it sort of doubles as a creepy Christmas movie, and I always have affection for that.
And that's part of what I kind of agree. I keep going back to, it's just it sold people on such a different bill of goods that there's so many great parts of it that I go back and forth on whether or not it should have been called what it's called. But I think the heart of it kind of is this relationship between the old lady and
Amy,
the kid, and kind of Amy. Like, that grows in such a way, and it's really interesting, and also creates these great set pieces of, you know, the visuals along with that story of the Headless Horseman and how that dream happens and how it relates to the ghost of Irena. All of that is really cool, actually. And you know, it also is the meat of the movie because the movie's only, you know, 70 minutes.
Yeah. It's funny, this film, once it gets to be Christmas, the movie gets completely taken over by all of this visual stuff that you can tell the filmmakers are like, now we're into the stuff that we're really enjoying, you know, with just the snow and the
Oh
getting,
yeah.
like, you know, if you think of those of us who grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I remember they used to play these classic cartoons in the afternoon that were like probably that they got for free, I would imagine, you know. And one of them was like Tom Thumb, and I can't remember. He's a little boy, tiny boy, fits in the palm of his dad's hand, and can't remember why he gets upset with his father, but he goes out in the storm. This is a theme in a lot of these old cartoons. It's like somebody like runs away in a storm, and it's just like that here. It is an amazing storm that she goes out into, and everybody's like lanterns and shouting after them and stuff. This is the thing that captures your imagination as a kid. I presume it captures, I mean, it captures my imagination as an adult, but somehow these are like very elemental images. She goes out, she finally makes her way to you know, and the reason, why does she run away? She runs away because her father has punished her for, in his words, pretending that she's not engaging in her fantasy world. He wants her to stop being.
No, she runs away because I think Irena tells her she's gonna be, she can't be her friend anymore. Like she's like basically like, you need to. Isn't that the point when she says you need to let me go, and then she's like leaves, and she's like, no, you can't go,
That's
and she
true.
chases her. I
Yes,
think that's how that works.
but it's after the
After she got
conflict with the
punished, yeah,
dad, where the dad,
right.
yeah, the dad punishes her because he's like, you told me that you were no longer, or you indicated to me that you were no longer engaging in all this fantasy, but clearly you're still believing or pretending. He and it's really not until they talk to the teacher where the teacher says, you know what, you should actually just kind of cut her some slack about having imaginary friends and stuff like that. She treats it from a child psychology perspective, whereas we're totally free also to treat it from a ghost story perspective. And let us, for a moment, before we catch up with the little girl in the snow getting to the house, can we stop for a moment and ask, in the logic of this universe, if it is in fact a sequel, why would Irena, actual Irena, be a ghost who becomes a friend to her ex-husband's daughter?
So again, I have thought about this a lot. I don't think that if it were an actual sequel that this would happen. Therefore, there's only two, in my opinion, there's only two rational explanations. One is, if assuming the ghosts are rational, one
Yeah.
is that there is a ghost and it has taken the form of Raina because that's a photo, because that's what the mom says, or
Yeah.
the dad, whoever says, you know, maybe she's seen the photos and so that's what she imagines a friend. So
Yeah.
it's either that she's literally imagining this friend and has picked and has decided she looks like this beautiful woman in the photos,
Yeah.
or it's that there is a ghost and it's taken the form of Irena because that's because of you know, the photos are there and the painting is basically Irena's, you know,
Yeah.
visage haunts this house. But I don't see a way that, yeah, I don't see a reason why she would haunt the child in a nice, positive way like she does. If it were the case, if anything, she would be haunting her in a
In
you know,
a not
evil
so
way,
nice
in an
way.
evil way, yeah, where
Well,
she'd be like, oh, I'm gonna freak out the you know,
I
this
don't know about that
horse
because
child or whatever.
All right.
Irena, towards the end of the first movie, did seem kind of resigned to her doomed nature.
Mm.
So,
yeah.
So you think maybe it's
like,
that she's like that she sees the little girl as another victim of this horrible couple?
No,
possibly,
she could
or
see
that
her
Well, not
as
exactly that,
or
but
that she sees as like a way to maybe have something, you
Yeah.
know, a family in death that she couldn't have had in life.
I'm with
But
you on that.
like,
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
That it's the
um,
life that she could
well,
never have. Yeah. That's I find that possible.
I mean, the
I mean,
bottom
often in
line
ghost
is
stories,
it's
ghosts are trying to finish off unfinished business.
Mm, okay. Yeah, I can see
Funny,
it.
what were you saying?
well, the bottom line is it's because it's Amy's ghost and not
Yeah.
her father's ghost. I mean, that's the real meat of it, and it could be coming from several different ways. It could be that the ghost adopts the name because that's what it's latched onto because of all the things that you were talking about
Yeah.
just a few minutes ago, or and that's part of the family kind of trauma that's inherent to this. He certainly can't let go, even though he's got his marvelous coworker wife, which is all he wanted in the first one.
Yeah.
And he's got a lovely child. If she would just quit with the damn imagination that that kids have, why can't she be an adult who's has an affair? Why can't he do things like that?
Yeah.
Why can't she be an adult like him and just not think of fantasy at all?
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that guy so much. But
he really is that guy, and he believes that's the way. But I think you're right that people
But he
do sort of
does
try to nudge him.
actually have to learn to not be that way. Like by the end of the movie, he has to be like,
I mean, yeah, when his kid almost dies.
yeah,
But, like,
I'm not
that's the
saying
thing,
that,
it's
but
so
like, there
superficial
is
and crap.
character growth.
Yeah.
There is character. I'm not saying he's not obnoxious and boorish, but there is character growth there, and
Growth only
framing
happens at the
it
very.
in
It's
the
not even
way
growth.
of
It's
a
like a
ghost.
coin that he flips.
Framing it in the terms of a ghost story, it is also with sort of how he kind of has to put the trauma of Irena's death behind him.
Can I just point out also that Scrooge also flips over the course
It's
of
growth
one
in the
night.
way that Scrooge. I was gonna say it's growth in the way that Scrooge has growth.
Yeah.
In the way that, like, oh my gosh, my kid
Christmas
died.
Carol
I
is
guess
the most famous ghost story of all time. So,
Yeah.
like, not exactly.
Well, I don't know if I would label that as growth per se, but
I'm with you.
turning on a
I see your
dime.
point,
I don't
Tony,
know.
which is, we shouldn't be too forgiving
Had
of the guy. I get you.
Had his
Yeah.
kid not ran out into the snow,
Yeah.
he thought she died, he would have never changed. And I guess that's like saying, well, this car wreck hadn't happened, this wouldn't have happened, or this, hadn't had this banister not fallen. Like, I guess that's not.
Life is, though. Like, people sometimes
true.
won't change unless something bad happens. to
Actually,
make
though,
them see
wait,
the error of
he
their
was
ways.
gonna change. We don't know how much it would have stuck, but because their best friend is the teacher, and the teacher has read some child psychology, she says you should go up there and offer to be a nicer person, and he's like, "Yeah, I guess I'll do that." And so he goes up.
I
and it's
do
just this
love
great
how the teacher kind of checks him with like, "Well, I have a kid. What do you know? What do you know? And about kids? You're just a teacher." And he's like, she's like,
she says a much more sophisticated version of all you did was produce sperm, dude.
Yeah, I studied children.
True.
Like, I think that might be one of my favorite parts in the whole
Yeah.
movie.
And she's able to cite
have
a
a degree on
psychology
this.
book, in the words of Quentin Tarantino, an actual book. She talks about, yeah. So I also want to take a moment to mention they have a character that just shows up in all these 40s movies, which is Edward, and he's their house servant.
Butler, basically.
live-in butler.
They're doing all right. They're doing all right for themselves.
Yeah, they are.
especially.
Yeah, and this guy is played by Sir Lancelot, and Sir Lancelot. Oh, I went back and watched on YouTube Sir Lancelot singing his song, because in I Walked with a Zombie, which is another film that I think is kind of cursed by a terrible title. But I Walked with a Zombie, Sir Lancelot plays the local troubadour, and he just wanders around making up new verses about the people of the island, especially the main family that runs the sugar mill. And it is great, and it's so macabre and weird. And
I mean, it's weird in the fact that this is very of a time, like his character and where he fits in the household. But I do really like his character and how he interacts with the family, and his presence with Amy and all of that. Like, watching it, it's very like, oh, some of this is things have changed a lot. But I really like his character is great, and just his kind of being this buffer for so many things in the household, and the way they have him come in and out and speak up and his again, his whole thing with Amy and how he interacts, and then how that sublimates to the parents and back.
Yes.
I actually really like this character a lot.
He's a great character.
Even though we
And
can
he
look
spends
at
time
it
with
and
Amy.
go like, wow, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, he's there at the house, like,
Right.
and
This is a
having it be a
character
guy actually is really interesting. Like,
Yeah,
having
that
it be
is
a
interesting.
butler instead of more of a maid or au pair, or, there, and a lot of this was tied in, racially. When you see lots of movies, there'd be kind of the traditional kind of mammy type character, but instead you have this guy who's like, he's very soft spoken. Just I really dug that a lot, actually.
The character of the live-in maid or live-in butler, even for just a regular middle-class family, used to be seen in pop culture a lot. Like you look in like
My Three
Auntie
Sons.
Mame, my three sons. Well, my three sons, it was their uncle who had come to help out
Oh, then
around the
not My
house.
Three Sons. I thought there was one
Well,
that
first
had
of
like
all,
a.
the Brady Bunch had a live-in maid.
Yeah, well, that's yeah, and Hazel is her name. But I'm thinking Hazel there was a show called
But
Hazel.
Bachelor Father, he had a butler.
That's the one, Bachelor Father. I knew there was one where there was a man with a manservant, basically.
Yes, I mean
Yeah.
Mr. Belvedere, was a live. That's just a middle class family. There's the line. I can't remember what. Oh, Agatha Christie said that when she was growing up, she believed. Just to show you where economics was at the time, when she was growing up, she believed that her family would never be wealthy enough to have a car, but they would never be poor enough not to have servants. And so there's this at least in movies and in TV in 30s and 40s, you would expect if the family's kind of rich enough to have a car, then they've
Well,
probably got a
and in
maid.
Latin America, it's been that way a lot more recently because since it was a lot, and I'm sure in other countries too. I'm just familiar with Latin America. People, the technology was much slower to reach those areas of third world countries, so you didn't necessarily have amazing, like in the 40s and 50s, you didn't suddenly get amazing washers and dryers and all the amenities that we have and dishwashers. So people continued to have servants, and even now, like, you don't have to be super rich to have a live-in maid in Central America. So yeah, that continues to be the case.
Yeah. Anyway, fascinating stuff. But he's good, and he looks after Amy, and he argues with her. But he argues with her on her level. He kind of treats her with a certain amount of respect that's refreshing. Is cool.
Yeah, he knows, he sees her, I mean, even more so than her father. He understands that kids, if you talk to them, and you can't talk to them exactly as adults, but if you treat them as if you're peers, even if you may, talk to them a little differently, that goes a long way.
Yeah.
It's not talking down. It's, hey, and he even defines, like, right now I'm vacuuming. Like, we can't go do this thing. We can't.
Yeah.
I have adult things, and then we'll do the things that you need to do.
Yeah.
Actually, he
but
says,
it's always on a level. Okay.
Actually, he says, no, just go by yourself. even though the mom specifically said for her to go with him, and she's like, "Oh, can I? Cool."
Right.
They're like, "No.
Yeah,
Your
Well,
mom
that's a very
said,
realistic thing for a kid to do. That is
your mom
a
said
very
you need to go with him."
Right, but at first he's talking to her at again, like Jason said, at her level, but as a peer, which is goes a long way towards trust with children, and just how would you want to be treated, kind of thing. Like, I've watched that with a lot of my friends who are parents, like, how they treat their kids in a similar manner, that goes a long way towards both confidence and just people like humans.
But one note that I wanted to make before I forget, about the parenting, not about the butler, but the parents, is that my thought I kept having, which is true for today too as well, is whenever you tell a child, "Don't talk to me anymore about that, I don't want to hear that," you're telling them, "Don't open up to me anymore, like, don't tell me things." And so if in today's world, like, this whole idea of no, there's no way that you went to that house and somebody talked to you, don't tell me that again, that's today's world that's saying, I don't want to know if some pedophile like sexually assaults you. I mean, that's what you're telling that kid at that point. It's like, we're gonna have if you have things like this to tell me that are gonna upset me, just keep it to yourself. And so that's what really terrifies me as a parent. I'm like, do not, and I'm sure I've done it myself millions of times, where I've reacted in a negative way to something my kids have told me, and they've said to themselves, note, do not tell mom things like this anymore. And I'm sure it's been something that I probably would have benefited from knowing, possibly. But that's the thing. It's like so easy as a parent to go, I don't want to hear that from you. And then the kid says, okay, don't tell parent things that are going to upset them, and it could be something that we really need to know.
Mm-hmm. Really, really solid point. Yeah. And apparently a lot of this is based on Lewton's ideas about his own childhood. And I don't completely understand.
And his own relationship with his daughter, he said, as well.
Well, I don't understand how exactly that keys into, the script. He wasn't a credited writer.
With the mail, no, it was the thing with the mailbox tree. That was his thing. Like, he actually, when he was a kid, believed that he had a magical mailbox tree.
What that means is that he must have given the writer a lot to work with, and said, here's my thoughts on this, and which is pretty cool.
I think it's safe to say that Lewton, because he did kind of these horror films that he made for RKO, like, they have a certain aesthetic to them, and I think it's safe to say that Lewton was more hands-on than a typical film producer. I won't quite say producer as Artur, but these are definitely, we call these Val Lewton movies.
Yes.
We that's when people refer to these films, there's like, it's a Val Lewton movie, and I think that's because there's a commonality style within the style between all of them. And this movie might be the most Val Lewton of all of them, because it's so psychological. Like, they even kind of give you an out for why she might be seeing, Irena, because she sees these pictures of her. And, so it could really just all be in this kid's head if you choose to frame it that way. Which the first movie doesn't even really give you that. This movie gives you more of an out than the first movie, to be sure.
It's really true. Yeah. We should get to the finale. So she runs across and she gets to the house where, we've already heard that young Barbara, who's been rejected by her mother, either because her mother has dementia or because she is in fact a revenant,
not the daughter,
or she's a con artist. But and I really do like the idea that she's a revenant, that only some people can see. Regardless, she says, I'm going to kill that girl. So the girl gets there as the search party is searching for her, but Amy avoids being strangled to death by calling on Irena, who appears one more time, to inhabit Barbara and prevent her from strangling her. By the way, the inhabiting thing, cool visual effect, and also such a crazy comic book idea that it was like something out of the X-Men. That was just wild and weird. I don't know. I'm trying to think of another Hollywood movie from this era where somebody takes over somebody else's body and starts moving it. I mean, Drew, you know this era better than I do. Can you think of anything that has a body possession?
Not offhand. It might exist, probably not as overt as this is. I'm gonna think on that, and if it pops up to me in my brain later, like at like 2 a.m. and I wake up and I'm like, Eureka! I'll send you a message or I'll post it on the Facebook or something. But I can't offhand think of that.
It's pretty rare. I mean, if it's not the first one. It's hard to think of,
Possession it's also wasn't really as heavily used as a subject matter until much later, and rarely as overt as this.
Yeah, Tony, what were you gonna say?
Sorry, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, it's also we see a little bit of that kind of superimposed kind of action in Metropolis, definitely way earlier, but you also, I thought it was interesting if it's it does almost look like, and especially the way that she disappears in just a little bit after this scene, that it was almost kind of two ghosts as well. Like, there's also that impression, because and again, it goes back to just how she seems to disappear under the stairs or wherever she goes when
Yeah.
people look for her. But it almost had that kind of duality of spirits feel in this case.
It's
as the
creepy,
movie,
man.
you
It
know,
gives
as we
me
see the movie
chills.
progress, it is cool though.
Yeah.
I wonder if anything ever happened to this chick, like if anybody suspected that she was about to strangle.
Well, yeah, because
child or
Amy,
not.
we don't get a line where Amy goes, hey, not for nothing, but not only is that lady dead there, but her daughter downstairs was trying to strangle me because I would have killed for a scene where a detective goes, there ain't no daughter downstairs. That would have been
Right.
great.
Exactly. No, like, who are you talking about? And the butler guy's like, yeah, she was here. She's the one who opened the door for me earlier. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
No, I know
Yeah.
that would be great because they didn't talk to her. Like, you do not see the cop. You just see the butler, but you do not see the cops interact with that woman, with the daughter. You
Yeah.
only see them come in and see the body on the stairs.
Yep. Yep, because Barbara just walked slowly and underlit back down under the house again.
Mhm.
Jesus H. Christ. I mean, she scares me, man. I mean, I'm in a basement right
This
now, and
movie's
it's
all
scary down
kinds of
here.
low key scary. It's never
Yes.
like ooh scary. But
Yeah.
like there's like again like the whole fact that she's about that they show her putting her hands around this kid's neck, like that's dark, man. You know,
Yes.
like that's dark no matter what year that
Well, that's
you're
what's
making
funny
the
is
movie.
it's not a kid's movie, but it has very childlike themes. And so therefore it's a movie that's aimed at us, asking us to kind of remember what it's like to be a kid, you know? And
But that's what I found fascinating is in some ways it does fit in. That's why I said I don't mean it to be derogatory to say after school special or
yeah,
there's any number of adult-ish kids films
yeah,
that I think a child would relate to, you know, the ostracism she receives from her friends because she accidentally didn't invite them to the party. And it's
yeah.
also heartbreaking because the dad doesn't do anything to go, you know, that was an honest mistake. I should talk to to their parents or whatever. Instead, he goes, well, you shouldn't have shoved those stupid letters in the letter tree, you idiot.
That's what you get.
Daughter. That's what you get when you have a letter tree, a mail tree. Of course your flights of fancy have led you to folly and all your friends hate you. And they're like, geez, man, for real, like the kid made a mistake.
I know.
Like, but
it's like
if you were a kid,
the punishment was that nobody showed up to her things. Just cut her some slack.
yeah,
You know,
that's
as a
enough.
therapist
Isn't
once
that
said,
bad enough that none of your friends showed up?
I mean, as a therapist once said to me, I'm
Ugh.
sure that he comes by it honestly. Okay, I'm sure, I'm sure that the way this guy is a product of everything. So it's
Except he's not, because in the previous movie he says it straight up until the point
I was
where
privileged.
he
Yeah.
dated and married a Catwoman. He never had any. He just was a blithe
That's true.
spirit, and everything worked out for him. And he was the best. Like, you know, I was the best at sports, and we had, you know, we summered
Everything
in
worked
wherever.
out for me great. Yeah,
I never
no,
thought
true.
of anything until this one woman. You know, I married someone who I didn't understand, and we didn't have sex, and now my world is asunder.
Now I know what suffering is.
And now I know what suffering is, and I'm gonna shove that onto my kid because it just didn't work out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like,
You're right.
You know,
good point.
Look,
That's
I mean, his trauma is trauma. It's real adult trauma. Like,
Yeah.
I get it, but some of that. What you're saying doesn't exactly ring true because up until he found someone interesting who stoked a passion that, you know, like, oh man, dark, this woman's dark and mysterious. Let me pursue that. Until that happened, he admits, like, man, everything was great. I don't even know what suffering is.
That's true. That's so totally true. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, hey, cool if you got it. I mean, you know, far be it for me to begrudge having that, but I don't feel. It's harder for me to relate and or feel too sorry.
No, I'm with you. But also remember
that sounds more callous. Like your trauma is relative to you, right?
We don't have to worry about Kent,
but,
honestly, or I guess he's called Oliver.
I got
honestly,
you, but, you know,
our
Oliver
task
Reed,
in this movie,
by the way,
Oliver Reed, yes.
Reed.
Yeah. No, yeah. And I don't know if Oliver Reed's actual birth name was Oliver Reed, incidentally. I have no idea. But it's not our task when watching this to really give a shit about what happens to Oliver, because our heart is with Amy, honestly. I mean, we are not watching this movie in great hopes that Oliver is going to be a better person. We just hope he's going to be a little bit easier on Amy, because it's all about her. I just wanted to mention, and then we should wrap up. It's so gorgeous. I mean, everything, the frosted windows, the way that set they built of the backyard with the little bench and the tree and the back wall of trees and everything. And of course, it's a back wall of trees because it's a stage, right? Obviously. But boy, is it beautiful.
Especially when Irena gives her Christmas gift, which is she lights up the woods. Basically, it's just this
Oh,
gorgeous winter
this
wonderland.
thing
yeah,
should be
that's
a
really
ballet.
beautiful.
I mean, it is. It's really really wondrous. I wanted to mention something. I'm not sure where this fits into any themes, so you're welcome to throw out any topic you want. But I just wanted to throw out something where I actually remember that I said something once that the way I've reacted to this movie means that I just was wrong about that. Because we were talking about The Exorcist number something or other. And I said the problem with with this is that the best sequel is just the same movie over and over again. That I would be perfectly happy to watch an Exorcist 2 that was really just Exorcist 1 just again. Like, here's another little girl, she's possessed. Here comes Father Marion, we're going to fix her. That's it. Do it like 6 or 7 times. I'd be fine with that. And it's like, why do we make this complicated? Why are we, and I was like, best sequels are the same movie again. This is not that. This fails that completely, and I love it. So obviously I didn't know what I was talking about.
But you love it independent of it being a sequel. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's
right.
But yeah, and we've also talked about how it actually completely fails as a sequel.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I mean, there's a lot of ink spilled on how people are frustrated with this movie when they watch it within the context of the first movie. And indeed, when I was younger, I sort of hated this movie. So like, because of that reason. So, that being said, with your Exorcist comment, like The Exorcist 3 is the best Exorcist sequel, and it's not that much like that.
No, it's a serial killer movie. That happens to have an exorcism tacked on at the end, but it's a serial killer movie. And it's good. Yeah. That had the benefit of a series that had completely plummeted in people's estimation. So it didn't matter what you did.
Also, I mean, I guess it ties into this. It's also a book called Legion, which they were like, if we don't also, like, since you wrote it, if we don't call it Exorcist 3, we're doing ourselves a disfavor.
That's absolutely
that's kind of exactly like how this got made. It's like,
exactly.
You can make whatever movie you want, but it has to be called.
Hey, I just answered my own question.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
Legion.
We backed ourselves into the trivia answer.
Legion is really good.
Yeah.
It's good as the book Legion. It's also good as the movie Exorcist 3.
Yeah.
But it's Exorcist 3 Legion, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I don't even know.
There is a version of it called that, but there's also the theatrical cut that is just Exorcist 3.
And I think, like a lot of Stephen King stuff, the book was tangentially related, but he was like, I'm not doing Exorcist 2, and although that
well, it has. I mean, it ties back into the church and such. But that book is really good. Like, it's compelling. Not to talk too much about it, but since we already talked previously about it, but the book has all the reasons that George C. Scott's character is weird, is fully on display in the book, and kind of goes into it more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's interesting that just randomly I go, oh yeah, I guess that's
the one.
My question.
I mean, there aren't a lot of examples, but I normally, if you were to ask me, I would say my favorite kind of sequel is just the same movie again. That's why I love the X-Files. It's like every episode is just because Chris Carter said in like quotes in the press, he was like, the way to make a show is you make the pilot again over and over again, 22 episodes a season. I was like, yeah, I'm on board.
I don't know.
That.
I don't know if he actually passed that test, but Law and Order certainly does.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely right.
Because I think his show actually doesn't do that at all. I think he does a whole bunch of different things. But anyway, but that is
That's a super
interesting.
good point.
That's interesting.
There's at least 2 different types of X-Files
Yes.
episodes.
Yeah,
But
right. The Monster of the Week and the story arc episodes are very different from each other. But
yeah,
yeah, I feel you. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so it was fun discussing like what is a sequel, what fails as a sequel.
we also are this podcast is way longer than this actual movie.
And that's actual movie. Yes, probably not the first time that's happened. It's definitely made me
Definitely
want
not
to
the first
watch
time.
I Walked with a Zombie again. I Walked with a Zombie is another one of those where you're talking to somebody and they go, "Oh, what kind of movies do you like?" And I was like, "Well, I'm a big fan of I Walked with a Zombie," and they it's like you named something that sounds like something below. This is where you just can't really talk to non-fans. You know what I mean? Because it's just more trouble than it's worth to go, "Oh no, it's actually really good," and no, it's just not worth it to explain.
Mhm.
You know. Um, so anyway, all right, let's get our final thoughts. And we went Tony, Julia, Drew, and then I'll go. Tony, this has been so fun discussing Curse of the Cat People, and I appreciate that you were the one who liked it the least, and I hope you didn't feel like we were being argumentative. So, what are your final thoughts?
No, I mean it is beautiful. It has a lot of really interesting parts, and I think it does, in retrospect, it does seem to work better as a Christmas ghost story. Of the kind of, again, I use the either anthology or after school special, but there's a certain kind of like, something wicked this way comes kind of children's adult kind of fare. There's many examples, and those are just the ones I'm drawing a blank.
Something, yeah, excellent point.
I'm more tired than I
Excellent
should
point.
be, I guess.
No, but Something Wicked This Way
there-
Comes is a great example. Yeah.
It fits in with that. It's for adults, but also children can relate a lot, and it's probably best, like seeing the ostracism, the trauma, the kind of not fitting in part of, if you're a kid with a big imagination. All these themes come up, and we see them a lot, and it was interesting, now that I think about it, to kind of see where some of that, there's a lot of directors and writers who probably saw this movie and took parts of it, or just kind of flavored how they were going to tell their particular coming of age story. I'm not saying those would be ripoffs, but that flavor has come up a lot of times. Ultimately, I still kind of wish it had more of the things that Drew suggested, as far as like, hey, if you want to tie this back, you can do these things.
Yeah.
And that would have worked. But that's not this movie. You have to kind of take the art on its own. It's not probably my favorite. I don't know if I would revisit it a lot, but I would revisit tons of stills from it, and the costuming, the stills, all the interactions with the house and her kind of going there and learning, and all that's also colored with there's a few decades ago, there's a lot of Disney movies that would kind of have that feeling of, well, the adults don't understand me, I'm going to go visit this other adult who treats me more like an adult than a child.
Yeah.
And that theme comes up a lot. So it is interesting in that respect. I don't have to have like a direct, like, oh, this has to have cat people this way. Like, I don't have a preconceived notion of what a Cat People sequel should be.
Well,
but it's such a radical change in theme that it is incongruous in some ways. But again, a beautiful movie, and I don't regret watching it, because we had a great discussion about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I regret that it's called Curse of the Cat People. I just think that has nothing to do with cat people. Like you said, like there's no cat people in this movie, and so it's annoying to me. I wish that I can understand why they called it that, because of the wanting the box office to reflect the original movie, but I kind of wish that they would have another name for it now, like as opposed, like they would have just kind of dropped that and been like, let's just call it something else.
Over the years,
Because that's just irritating. It's like, it's so distracting to me that you're waiting for there to be cat people. I don't know. This is very peripherally horror. It's not really horror. It's just that you've got this kind of ghostly person in it and also this creepy ass daughter who wants to kill the child. But really, I think it's very very tangentially, it barely touches horror. But if you take that away, I think exactly what Tony said. It's a great kind of ghostly Christmas movie type of thing where, like like you said, something wicked this way comes, or Lion Witch in the Wardrobe kind of thing, where it's just like a little bit of touch of magic here and there. I think if it had wanted to be more horror, they could have gone more into if this person actually is a ghost. Like there could be some creepy, sounds and mood things and like lights turning on and off and what have you. Actually, the most ghostly thing that happens at the other house, which is another reason why we thought the daughter might be a ghost, is that when the daughter wants to kill the girl, Amy, the lights go dim, in the house. So it's like that to me is like the most ghostly thing that happens, and happens in a different house. But and then the daughter, like when the daughter is going to kill Amy, the ghost of Irena appears one last time to sort of just it kind of goes on like into. I was really unclear exactly what was going on there, but the appearance of Irena's ghost kind of goes into Barbara.
Yeah.
But
Well,
Barbara
and that was where
doesn't.
we were discussing, the it may be the first example we can think of where one person takes over the body of another. So,
Yeah, but I don't think she took it over. I see what you're saying. No, I missed why you started talking about that, and then I was like, I didn't want to just butt in and go, wait, what are you talking about? Yes, I get it. No, I don't think she took her over at all, because Barbara still appears to want to kill the girl, even when Irena's ghost is like on her, in her. What it did was it made the girl hug Barbara, because she thought she was hugging Irena, and that softened Barbara, and she didn't kill her. But
Wow,
I
that's an
didn't get the
interesting
impression.
reading.
I didn't get the impression at all that Irena was the one in the body, because her face was still in that like I really want to kill you way, and her hands were still like that. And then she kind of resigned herself, like, oh, I guess we're doing this. It's okay, fine, I won't kill you. But it just seemed like she kind of went okay. So that's kind of how I read that. But that's like, to me, the only time that that it starts to feel anything like horror is when she's in that house, and not so much when because none of the parents are never seeing anything weird or hearing anything weird that makes them think Irena might be around, except for that the wife says she just kind of always has this feeling that Irena haunts the house, but there's never been like a thing that happens. So I think the movie could have decided to be a horror movie more and done like 10 things that would have made it more horror-like. But I love the way it is. I think it's a beautiful picture. So as long as you don't walk into it going,
Do you know what
it's
this movie is called
horror
in
movie
Italy,
about
by the
cat
way?
people.
I was just looking at alternate titles. Most of the world, it was called The Vengeance of the Catwoman, basically. But in Italy, it was called Il Giardino delle Streghe. It is called The Witch's Garden.
Yeah, beautiful. Right, that's what it should be called.
That's a great title.
That's what it should be called.
I know. It's
I think we should start over with this podcast and call it that, and then pretend that we didn't have anything to do with the cat people, and see how we like the movie.
How funny it is! It has the same cast as Cat People.
Yeah, exactly. Same cast. Well, because there's plenty of movies that have the same cast as other movies. Heck, I mean, look at all the
Hammer movies. Yeah.
I was gonna say oh my god, my brain's not working right now. The Tim Burton movies with Johnny Depp and like Helena Bonham Carter, but we don't suddenly decide that they all have to be the same characters. Anyway, so I think it's gorgeous. I think it's interesting. I really like. Oh, the other thing it could have done to be more horror is, if in a different direction, would have been to deal with the child's issues as if she were actually going insane, because that's also another kind of horror where you're just like dealing with when somebody feels insanity taking over, how it feels to be inside of that person and to be around them. So none of that happens here. It's just a beautiful story about a girl who's may or may not actually be seeing a friendly ghost. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's not. There's nothing horrific, terrible about it. But I thought it was lovely. I really enjoyed watching it, and I definitely recommend it.
Thank you very much, Drew. What are your thoughts?
I just was thinking about one other thing about the things that are weird about when you do view this through the sequel lens, is that the lullabies that Irena sings to Amy are French for some reason, even
because
though
she's French, because the actress is French.
Right.
The actress is French, but the character is supposed to be Serbian.
Right, but that's the only reason they're in French, is because she knows them and they're in French.
Yeah, but I think that this is a movie that talking about how to classify this movie, you know, I would qualify it as magical realism, which is
Mhm.
you know, something we
Yeah.
see kicked around a lot in for fantasy movies, not so much horror movies, but I would definitely qualify this movie as dipping its toes in the fantasy pond as well. This is a movie that gets more interesting with age. Like I said, when I first watched this movie, I was very frustrated with it. Because of some of the you know, the necessity of trying to make it a sequel and using the characters from the first Cat People in the most tangential way. But as you get older, when you start to look at it as a meditation on childhood and childhood trauma, I think it just becomes more and more like fascinating. And again, I also just love the Hudson Valley setting and the fact that it is a creepy Christmas movie. So I think that there is a lot for genre fans to get out of this movie, even if it's not necessarily the stuff that they are looking for when they think, oh, this is a sequel to Cat People. Like, I still think this is very worthy of your time, especially considering that it's such a short film.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm so happy that we've talked about this, and I think that the final thing I will say is I had never seen this movie before. Certainly didn't watch it when I was growing up, and it wasn't even one of those films like I Walked with a Zombie that I had heard about growing up and had just saw it but never found. This was just a film that I had just never seen. It barely entered my consciousness. I thought of it as being, you know, something on the level. This is totally unfair, but I thought of it as being like any given throwaway film from the 40s, you know, of which there are many, many. But no, it's gorgeous. I love it. I will want to play it again. I want to play it for people. I want to live in its like little weird snowy gardens. It's a cool piece. So I really am glad that it came into my life. I've very much enjoyed it. So that brings us to the end of that. I would love to hear. Let's get endorsements, like whatever you're listening to, watching, just, you know, thinking about, anywhere you want to go. Tony, do you have anything for us this week?
Let's see. I was mainly I'm trying to think what I watched. I'm still in kind of watch a bunch of random things at night kind of mode, because to be honest, most of my week was spent preparing. I played my first gig with another band that's not Deserts of Mars, called The Flood. I started playing bass with them, and I played my first gig in probably 2 years at
Oh, good for you.
local pizza parlor dive bar called The Parlor. They had really excellent pizza, and that's Deserts of Mars played. There used to be a couple of Parlor locations, and Deserts of Mars played some of our first shows at the other location of the Parlor. So that was interesting and you know, emotional, and in COVID times, nerve-wracking. I wore a mask, 2 masks basically the whole time. I'm learning how to sing through them as well,
Wow.
just in case. But yeah, that's mainly what I was doing. Something that just struck me that as we talked about this being, you know, how it fits in with, you know, children's movies and books and fantasy and everything like that. Something totally tangential, just like what you're saying, like, hey, endorse whatever. But it led me to think about one of my favorite books growing up, and still something I enjoy. Julie Andrews Edwards, Mary Poppins herself, wrote a book called Last of the Really Great Wangdoodles.
Huh.
And it's part coming of age, you know, a lot about what is fantasy and how adults treat fantasy and how kids treat fantasy and imagination, as well as just being a straight up fantasy book. But now that you know, as we're talking through this, I was, oh man, that's a really great Wangdoodles. I haven't read that in a while. I don't know how many people know about it, but you know, definitely probably if I read it now, it's, you know, along the lines of more children's books. But I really enjoyed it, and it fits somewhere in there with the how we treat fantasy and how adults view it. I mean, it's an older book, so your mileage may vary. I've kind of looked at different reviews, and you know, some people like it, some people don't, but it just kind of reminded me of this idea of how we think about those things. So I'm going to endorse that, because it just somehow my brain went went there in addition to everything else.
I'm
So,
glad you brought it up. I do remember it, and I remember it being very well written. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a book that came out when our girls were small. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. My aunt was a school teacher, and I would stay with my grandparents in Hearn, and my aunt lived in Bryan College Station, and I used to visit, and she
Oh
would
my
always
goodness,
like give me books.
it is that old. I'm so sorry. I thought it came out like in the early 2000s, but you're right.
No.
It came out. I'm so sorry. Yeah, Tony.
No, I mean, don't be sorry. It's just
Well, it's funny
but
because your mind went to a different place because I was thinking, oh, so he went as an adult because I didn't know when it came out. He went as an adult and would read it because he was at his grandma's. And you're like, no, he must have been a child.
my
Yeah.
really
aunt
funny.
would give me tons of books. My part of why I read as much as I did was just being really that imagination and that love of books was fostered by a lot of my family. But my aunt would being a school teacher, I think she taught fourth grade, maybe. She taught in grade school, and she was always gifting me books. And I have these awesome book plates that have, I actually bought them. They're like some 70s book plates. I bought some so I could give to, friends' kids who I give books to, or my nieces and nephews and that sort of thing. But yeah, I just was reminded of that, and I don't know. It kind of fits in a really tangential way to the movie, but it just all of that stuff kind of came rushing back. So your mileage may vary on this book, but I really enjoyed it, and I think it does fit some of the themes. Cat people movie or not, it fits some of the themes of this movie in particular.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Julia, do you have anything to endorse for us?
Well, I'm terribly unoriginal with my endorsements when it comes to anytime anything MCU is out because I always will endorse that, and today's no exception. We went and saw Shang-Chi, and it was so good. It was so beautiful, and I didn't. Neither Jason nor I expected to like as much as we did because we were like, well, we don't really know this character that well, and we're not really into it. But no, it's again visually just stunning, incredibly beautiful, beautifully choreographed, beautiful everything about this film, and just really fun and interesting, and some great effects. It's really very, very well acted. There's a lot of lightness in it. Aquafina's in it, and she's always hilarious. So really highly recommend that. And then we're watching a fun little show on Hulu. I don't know how little it is, but a fun show on Hulu called Only Murders in the Building.
Yeah.
And it's, if you're the kind of person who likes podcasts about like true crime and stuff like that, you'll get especially a big kick out of this because they're all addicted to a podcast, kind of like Serial, and they all being Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. And then they kind of turn into they create their own podcast, and they turn into like amateur detectives about a crime that happens in the building. And then at one point Martin Short goes, maybe we should also like investigate other murders. And then they're like, no, we're only going to do murders in the building. So it's like, okay, well, we'll call the podcast Only Murders in the Building. So that's why it's called that. So it's really fun. It's 3 episodes have dropped, or at least as of a couple days ago. I don't know if any have dropped since then, but it's a really neat little show.
Yeah, Rain and I have been watching that as well. It is really well done, and Steve Martin and Martin Short are such a great pair.
Absolutely.
They're friends, and their interactions in the comedy world are great. So building on that, like I knew that was something I wanted to watch, and it's actually really good so far.
I actually was going to endorse that as well.
How funny!
You have saved me. So I'm cutting my endorsements down, but I will echo that it is also a very funny show.
Well, go ahead. I'm done with mine, so go ahead and say what else you endorse.
Go crazy, Drew.
Well, I have finished both seasons of The Kingdom. I have yet to watch the movie that they put out, but man, this was my endorsement last week. It's my endorsement this week. Like, it is so damn good. Like, it might be, with the exception of like the Romero stuff, this might be my favorite zombie anything, period. Like, it's
Awesome.
Wow.
so damn good. Yeah.
I need to catch up on season 2, so
Oh
yeah,
man,
you're ahead of
it's
me.
just, there's literally at least one thing every episode where I go, "Whoa, that's nuts!" Like, it's just I don't know, man. Guys with katanas versus the undead is like the flavor that I have been craving and didn't realize, until now. Like, cast is terrific, writing is good, costumes are good, special effects are good, stunt work is good. I really hope that I've been talking to everybody about it, like, incessantly, like, trying to get more people to watch it, because I was just like, have you seen the Kingdom? Have you seen Kingdom? Like, and I've become, I'm sure, annoying to some of the people in my life, but like, man, it is so good. A selfish endorsement again, I did just start a Patreon. I posted the link on our Facebook group. I will do so again. You can get early previews of all comics. You get really an inside look at how comics are made, and also you're supporting me and my creative team, especially as we head out to New York Comic Con next month. So please check that out if you're one of our comic book loving listeners. But that's all I got this week.
That's fantastic. And I guess I've got to try Kingdom. I'm always so skeptical of zombie stories, because so it means a lot for somebody to say,
Have we
listen.
steered you wrong though, Jason?
No, that's true.
This is
It's-
something I
it's
dealt with
not-
Drew, where I
it's-
go, "Hey, Drew, check this out," and then later on
Yeah.
he'll go, "Man, that was awesome," and I go, I'm sure the day will come one day when you'll go, "Tony, you were so wrong, and this sucked." But
Yes.
It's not what you expect. Like, there's so much thought and care put into the story. Like, this isn't, like a dumb schlocky zombie thing that just was kind of put out the cash in on the popularity of The Walking Dead or whatever. Like, this is like
I'm with
a
you.
beautiful piece of filmmaking, television, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's just amazing achievement.
and being different from what we've seen in the past too, because it's from Korea, so you get an even more different take that if you're not as familiar with drama storytelling, or if you've seen a bunch of wuxia films, you've seen zombie films from Japan as well, kind of J-horror stuff. This isn't that. It's like informed by all of that because we're all watching movies, but that different take also is a different flavor, so it adds a little bit more kind of you get a different spice basically out of this.
And I will also say, like, like, if it helps, like, it's perfectly fine to think of the monsters as not quite zombies, because they definitely graft in aspects of vampires into these creatures. So, like, I don't know, Jason. I think you would get hooked. Like, I
appreciate
really
that.
do.
Okay, all right.
I mean, if nothing else, beautiful too. So in addition to being just a really cool supernatural horror, it's beautiful. The way everything's framed is constantly just again, I know a lot of ink has been spilled. A lot of people, there's a lot of reviews, but cinematographers in Korea over the past, I mean, they've been doing stuff, but what we have gotten to see ramped up with the Vengeance movies and Old Boy, which kind of in a lot of ways, if you're a film buff, you've seen other stuff before then, but I think those movies kind of started this wave coming our way of more like, whoa, what's going on over there? And whatever, since then, and again, there's a long history of Korean film, but in my opinion, that's kind of what's opened the floodgates a little bit more. I'm sure somebody could refute that, but this is just kind of me, as a film lover, kind of seeing this unfold.
That's great.
Like the cinematographers on the movies, and we only get to see the most popular films a lot of times, unless you're really seeking it out. Like the things that hit the hardest, that they get picked up, not at festivals. But wow, there have been so many Korean movies that are just so lush and filmed just beautifully that, you know, whatever's going on in Korean cinema, I want to see more of it everywhere, because, you know, they're knocking it out of the park in so many ways.
That's awesome.
Not that that's not happening elsewhere, but just, you know, when you watch, you know, there's a ton of stuff, and this is no exception. Just there's so many bits that you could make a coffee table book just on the settings alone, much less when things are in action and just the choreography is amazing. So yeah, I don't know, not to lay it on too thick, but it is really good.
That's good. That's good though. Wow. Well, thank you, and thank you, Drew. I don't really have. See, I mean, I have the same things that everybody else has. I saw Shang-Chi just like Julia did. I'm just thinking about the fact that it's turning into fall, so I really recommend picking up. I have this DVD. I'm going to try and explain this because this is one of those things that's hard to explain if you haven't already seen it. But there's a DVD called Monsters Crash the Pajama Party. What it is mainly a collection of ballyhoo for live monster magic shows that people used to do, you know, in theaters, you know, like before movies. And so there were these, and if you've been to the Alamo Draft House, they used to, before a lot of horror films, they would just play like 40 minutes of this stuff. And they're just, you know, say, come to the monster show. And it's all groovy and spooky and graveyards and witches and black cats and cauldrons. And it took me years of going, hey man, what is that over there? And I finally figured out it's this one DVD that has it. And
Oh man, I need to get that. There was also
Yes.
really good. They found the one for Weird Wednesdays that just talked about the shows on Wednesday.
Oh, really?
And you know, and they had it on film, and I think they eventually digitized it, because as Weird Wednesday rolled on, this "come see the Wednesday movie" kind of thing started getting more splices, and you know, because these films that they were showing were just kind of like you know, they weren't always in the best condition anyway.
Right.
So I think they eventually digitized it before it just went into complete ruin. Oh, which, you know, Kayla's coming out with that.
Yeah, there's a book about
Weird Wednesday book.
Yes, I got to get my hands on that. I do want to mention, speaking of getting my hands on stuff, I got the box set of Sam Katzman movies, and so this week I'll be putting up an interview with Stephen Bissett, who wrote a number of essays about all the Sam Katzman movies in the box set, which include Giant Claw, Zombies of Moratau, The Werewolf, and The Creature with the Atom Brain. This is a set that I was just so thrilled to get a hold of. To actually have Zombies of Moratau on Blu-ray in a cleaned up version is just like one of the coolest things ever. So there we are. By the way, that Monsters Crash the Pajama Party is from Something Weird Video. So yes, Tony, you got to get this. You totally gotta get this. All right, everybody have a wonderful week. I've really enjoyed talking about the Curse of the Cat People, and I hope everybody has a world of kindness. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.